That morning, no one expected a single act of defiance to change military history. What began as routine training became a moment every soldier on base would remember, and one that would test the difference between following orders and doing what's right. The sun hung low over Fort Bragg, casting long shadows across the dew-slicked parade ground. Sergeant Elena Vasquez stood at attention, her boots planted firmly in the damp grass, the faint scent of wet earth mixing with the sharper tang of gun oil from the nearby armory. At her side, Rex, her German Shepherd K9 partner, sat rigid, his black and tan coat gleaming under the first rays. His ears were pricked forward, alert to every whisper of wind through the pines that bordered the base. Elena's hand rested lightly on his harness, a silent reassurance born of years together. Missions in the dust-choked valleys of Afghanistan, nights patrolling the wire under starless skies. "Platoon, attention!" The command barked from Captain Harlan Reed, his voice cutting through the crisp air like a blade. Reed was a broad-shouldered veteran, his uniform starched to perfection, insignia catching the light. He paced the front of the formation, eyes scanning the 30-odd soldiers assembled for the day's exercise. A standard K9 integration drill designed to sharpen the bonds between handlers and their K9 units. These weren't show dogs. They were force multipliers, trained to detect explosives, track insurgents, and guard perimeters where human senses fell short. Elena had joined the 82nd Airborne's K9 detachment 3 years prior after a stint as a combat medic. Rex had been her assignment from the start, a retired search and rescue dog from a civilian program, repurposed for military ops after proving his mettle in disaster zones. He was 7 now, his muzzle graying at the edges, but his drive remained unyielding. In the quiet hours before Reveille, Elena would run through their routines. The sharp tug of the leash during obedience drills, the low rumble in Rex's throat when he scented a hidden target. Their bond was unspoken, forged in the reliability of commands and the trust that followed. The platoon snapped to, heels clicking in unison. To Elena's left stood Private Marcus Hale, a young handler fresh from basic, his Belgian Malinois fidgeting at the end of a taut lead. Hale was eager, his posture a touch too rigid, but Elena had seen that fire before. It either tempered into skill or burned out under pressure. Across the field, the other dogs waited. Labs, shepherds, a pair of wiry Malinois, all leashed and silent, their breaths visible in the cool morning. "Today's objective," Reed continued, his tone measured, "is perimeter search and alert protocol. Handlers, your units will sweep the mock village site. Remember, the dog is an extension of your command. No deviations. We maintain discipline or we compromise the mission." Elena nodded faintly, her gaze fixed ahead. Discipline was the backbone of their world. Ranks enforced through salutes and reports. Routines that turned chaos into order. She'd learned that early, in the field hospitals where she'd patched wounds under fire, always deferring to the chain above her. Rex shifted slightly, his nose twitching toward a distant hum. The rotors of a Black Hawk warming up on the helipad, a reminder that this base pulsed with the rhythm of readiness. The drill commenced with precision. Whistles blew, and handlers fanned out toward the simulated village, a cluster of plywood structures ringed by chain-link fencing, dotted with concealed threats like inert IED props. Elena moved at a steady jog, Rex matching her stride without command, his paws thudding softly against the packed dirt. The air grew warmer as they entered the site, the scent of pine giving way to the metallic bite of simulated smoke from earlier exercises. "Clear left," Elena murmured into her radio, her voice low and professional. Rex's head swung methodically, nostrils flaring as he processed the layers of odor. Diesel from a parked Humvee, the faint rot of leaf litter, the chemical trace of hidden simulants. They rounded a corner, approaching a mock civilian hut when Hale's voice crackled over the comms, strained, urgent. "Sergeant Vasquez, my dog's pulling hard. He's alerting on something off-script." Elena paused, glancing toward Hale's position 50 yards away. His Malinois shadow strained against the leash, hackles raised, a low growl building. Reed's whistle cut the air, halting the exercise. The captain strode over, his face a mask of controlled impatience. "Report, Private," Reed demanded, stopping short of Hale. "Sir, shadows indicating explosives, but it's not in the brief. That corner building, it's got a scent he's locked on." Reed's eyes narrowed, flicking to the structure, a standard prop, cleared that morning by EOD techs. "The brief is the brief, Hale. Your dog's trained to respond to commands, not improvise. Reel him in." Hale hesitated, his grip tightening on the lead. Shadow whined, pawing the ground, his focus unyielding. Elena watched from her position, Rex sitting obediently at her side, though she felt the subtle tension in his body, a mirror to her own unease. Dogs didn't lie. Their alerts were instincts honed sharper than any human intuition, but protocol demanded verification through the chain, not instinct alone. "Sir," Hale pressed, voice steady but edged with doubt, "he's never false alarmed. What if—" "Private," Reed interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. "The dog's just an animal. It follows training, nothing more. Stand down, or you'll answer to the CO for disrupting the drill." The words landed like a slap, echoing across the open ground. Eleanor's jaw tightened, her hand instinctively dropping to Rex's head. She'd heard the dismissal before, in briefings, in casual barracks talk, but hearing it now, aimed at a handler mid-exercise, stirred something deeper. Rex had saved lives, not just in simulations, but in the real grit of deployment, sniffing out ambushes that would have claimed platoons. To call him just an animal, dismiss the loyalty that bound them, the silent partnership that asked no questions, only obedience in return. Hale complied, yanking Shadow back, but the dog's whine lingered, a haunting note in the morning stillness. Reed signaled to resume, but the rhythm felt off now, the platoon's focus fractured. As Elena led Rex forward again, her mind replayed the captain's words, weighing them against the code she'd sworn to uphold. Duty meant following orders, but conscience whispered of the costs when those orders blinded them to truth. By midday, the drill wrapped under a climbing sun, handlers logging reports in the shaded briefing tent. The air inside hummed with the low buzz of fans and the scratch of pens on clipboards. Eleanor filed her after-action notes. Rex curled at her feet, his breathing even but watchful. Hale sat across the folding table, uncharacteristically quiet. Shadow's lead coiled in his lap. "You did right pushing back," Elena said softly, keeping her voice for his ears only. "Even if it didn't land." Hale met her gaze, his young face lined with fatigue. "Captain's got his way, Sarge, but Shadow doesn't miss sense. What if there's something there?" Before she could respond, Reed entered, his presence drawing the room to attention. "Debrief in 5. And Hale, expect a counseling statement. Initiative's fine, insubordination isn't." The tent fell silent, save for the distant thump of boots on the path outside. Elena felt Rex's nose nudge her boot, a subtle alert to her rising tension. The chain of command was ironclad, but cracks like this one could widen, forcing choices that rippled far beyond a single drill. As the platoon rose, she wondered how long obedience could hold against the pull of what was right. The afternoon sun beat down on the briefing tent, turning the canvas walls into a stifling oven. Elena Vasquez wiped a bead of sweat from her brow, her uniform clinging uncomfortably as she reviewed the after-action reports. Rex lay at her feet, his flanks rising and falling in a steady rhythm, but his eyes remained half open, tracking the movements of the handlers around him. The air carried the mingled scents of stale coffee from the pot on the folding table and the earthy musk of overheated dogs, all contained in this temporary hub of accountability. Captain Reed stood at the head of the room, his tablet glowing under his fingers as he scrolled through the logged alerts. The platoon sat in rows on metal chairs, postures straight despite the heat, notebooks at the ready. Hale fidgeted slightly to Elena's left, his pen tapping a silent Morse code against his knee. Shadow was kennelled outside, but the private's unease mirrored the dog's earlier agitation. "Overall execution was solid," Reed began, his voice even, projecting authority without volume. "Perimeter sweeps hit 92% efficiency, but we had deviations, unnecessary alerts that pulled focus from primary objectives." His gaze settled on Hale, lingering just long enough to command silence. "Private, your log shows Shadow indicating a non-threat area. Explain." Hale straightened, clearing his throat. "Sir, the dog locked on a scent profile matching our training simulants. It wasn't in the brief, but his response was consistent with protocol for unknown indicators." Reed's expression remained neutral, but Eleanor caught the subtle tightening of his jaw, a tell she'd noted in high-stakes briefings during her medic days. "Protocol requires verification through command, not independent action. Dogs are tools, Hale. Reliable when controlled, distractions when not. Your hesitation cost the team 2 minutes of cohesion." The room shifted uncomfortably, chairs creaking under restrained movements. Elena's fingers tightened around her pen, the plastic warm from her grip. She'd seen handlers dismissed like this before. Young ones, full of instinct but short on rank. Rex had alerted on anomalies too, in the shadowed alleys of Kandahar, where a ignored whine could mean a buried IED or worse. To reduce that to tools felt like erasing the lives saved, the quiet vigils where a dog's nose bridged the gap human senses couldn't cross. "Sergeant Vasquez," Reed continued, turning to her, "your sweep was textbook. Any observations on the private's incident?" Elena met his eyes, her response measured. "Sir, Rex mirrored the terrain scan without issue, but in field conditions, canine alerts often precede human confirmation, dismissing them outright risks oversight." Reed nodded curtly, acknowledging without conceding. "Noted. But we're stateside, Sergeant. This is training, not theatre. Chain of command filters instinct into action." He closed his tablet with a decisive snap. "Dismissed. Hale, my office in 10 for that counselling form." As the platoon filed out, the tent emptied into the glaring light of the quadrangle. Boots scuffed against gravel paths lined with creosote-treated timbers, the distant bark of a sentry dog punctuating the hum of idling generators. Elena lingered, clipping Rex's lead before stepping into the heat. The shepherd rose fluidly, shaking off the tense confinement, his paws padding softly beside her as they headed toward the kennels. Hale caught up, his face flushed, not just from the sun. "Sarge, you think I'm in deep. Captain's got that look, like he's filing more than a form." She kept her pace steady, eyes forward on the low-slung buildings of the K9 facility, their metal roofs shimmering. "Forms are paper, Hale. Focus on the dog. Shadow's alert was real to him. That's what matters in the long run." They reached the kennels, a row of chain-link runs backed by a concrete wash area where handlers hosed down gear. The air here was cooler, laced with the clean scent of water and the faint ammonia of cleaned enclosures. Elena unclipped Rex, watching as he trotted inside, circling his space before settling on a worn blanket. Hale did the same for Shadow, who paced restlessly, nose buried in a corner as if chasing a ghost scent. Inside the handler's ready room, a Spartan space with lockers, a whiteboard of rotation schedules, and a battered coffee maker, Elena poured 2 mugs from the fresh pot. Hale slumped into a chair, rubbing his temples. "It's not just the form. Captain's been pushing this tool line since I transferred in, like we're interchangeable with the drones in the hangar." Elena handed him the mug, steam curling between them. She leaned against a locker, the metal cool through her sleeve. Reed's old school, command first always, came up through infantry pre-drone era, but dogs aren't machines. Rex pulled me out of a collapse in a quake zone years back, before I was even military, buried under rubble in Haiti, post-earthquake. He dug for hours, wouldn't quit till they got me out. Hale's eyes widened slightly, the story pulling him from his worry. Heard rumors about that. Civilian SAR program, right? How'd he end up here? Repurposed after proving out. But that bond, it's not training, it's memory. He knew my scent, my fear, same as Shadow knows yours now. She paused, sipping the bitter brew, the liquid grounding her. Outside, Rex's low woof echoed, answered by another dog's yip, a routine check-in through the runs. Their conversation halted as the door swung open. Lieutenant Sarah Klein, the detachment's XO, entered with a clipboard. Her uniform as impeccable as Reed's, but softened by a trace of field dust on her boots. Klein was Elena's direct superior, a no-nonsense officer with a background in military working dog programs. Vasquez, Hale. Captain wants a secondary review on that alert site. EOD's re-clearing it, but quietly. No logs until confirmed. Hale straightened. Ma'am, Shadow's still keyed up. If I could, negative, Klein cut in, her tone firm but not unkind. You'll observe only. Vasquez, your lead on this. Your experience carries weight. Elena nodded, setting her mug down. The request stirred the unease from the drill, a potential violation of the morning's order, yet framed as procedure. As they moved out, Rex and Shadow leashed and trailing. The base thrummed with late-afternoon activity, a convoy rumbling past, soldiers double-timing to the mess hall, the sharp crack of rifle fire from the range half a mile off. The mock village loomed ahead, its plywood facades baking under the sun, shadows lengthening across the dirt. EOD techs in bulky suits milled near the corner building Hale had flagged, their detectors humming softly. Reed stood apart, arms crossed, watching as the team swept the area. Elena positioned Rex at a distance, his nose already questing, while Hale held Shadow back, the Malinois straining with restrained energy. One tech paused, kneeling to probe a loose panel at the structure's base. "Contact!" he radioed, voice muffled through his hood. The team froze. Then carefully extracted a small packet, contraband simulant, overlooked in the morning clear. Not a threat in training terms, but enough to validate the alert. Whispers rippled among the observers, the air thickening with unspoken questions. Reed's face remained impassive, but Eleanor saw the flicker in his eyes. Calculation, perhaps reassessment. "Log it as a training anomaly," he ordered the techs, his voice carrying. To Hale, quieter. "Good eye on your dog, Private, but next time, root through chain." Hale saluted, relief etching his features, but Elena felt the undercurrent. The incident wasn't over. It had exposed a flaw in the routine, a moment where instinct pierced protocol. As they returned to the kennels, Rex pressing close to her leg, she pondered the test unfolding, not just for Hale, but for all of them. Loyalty to the pack, human and canine, demanded more than obedience. It required the courage to question when the chain bent under its own weight. By evening, as the sun dipped behind the pines, casting the base in amber, Elena groomed Rex in the wash area. Water sluiced over his coat, rinsing away the day's dust, his eyes meeting hers in quiet trust. The hose's steady rush drowned out the distant chatter of the barracks, but in her mind, the captain's words echoed. Just an animal. Yet here, in the simple act of care, she saw the truth. Their partnership was the unyielding core, a defiance born of necessity waiting to be tested further. The night air cooled the kennels, carrying the faint chill of dew forming on the chain-link runs. Elena Vasquez finished drying Rex with a rough towel, his coat fluffed against the dim glow of the security lights. The base had quieted, save for the occasional rumble of a patrol vehicle along the perimeter road and the soft snores of dogs settling into their routines. She locked the run gate with a metallic click, her mind still turning over the day's events, the overlooked simulant, Reed's clipped dismissal, Hale's shadowed relief. In the handler's ready room, she logged the grooming notes by the light of a single desk lamp, the scratch of her pen the only sound breaking the hush. Sleep came fitfully in her barracks quarters, the thin mattress doing little to ease the ache in her shoulders from the day's jogs. Dreams blurred the line between past and present. Rex's insistent digging in Haitian rubble, the boy's wide eyes from a deployment memory she rarely revisited. By 0500, Reveille blared through the speakers, pulling her back to the rhythm of duty. She dressed in the pre-dawn grey, fatigues pressed, boots laced tight, and headed to the kennels, where Rex waited with his usual patient vigilance, tail thumping once against the concrete. The morning formation assembled under a sky streaked with pink, the platoon larger now with attachments from the EOD unit for a joint exercise. Captain Reed addressed them from the podium, his voice amplified slightly by the portable mic, cutting through the mist that clung to the grass. Yesterday's anomaly is resolved, training oversight, nothing more. Today we integrate K9 with demo sweeps. Precision is non-negotiable. Handlers, your units respond to verified cues only. Elena stood at ease, Rex's lead loose in her hand, his body heat a steady presence against her leg. Hale was to her right, his posture correct, but his eyes distant, the counseling form from the previous day likely weighing on him. Whispers had circulated in the mess hall last night. Reed pushing for a formal incident report, framing the alert as a handler error to tighten protocols. It chafed against Elena's experience. Dogs like Rex and Shadow didn't err on intent, they amplified what humans missed. The exercise launched into the expanded mock village, now laced with fresh props under EOD oversight. Handlers paired off, radios crackling with position checks. Alpha Team, sector clear. Elena and Hale drew the eastern flank, Rex leading with purposeful strides, his nose sifting the air layered with dew and faint explosive simulants. Shadow matched pace, the two dogs forming an unspoken tandem, their leashes humming with tension. Halfway through the sweep, near the same corner structure, Shadow alerted again, sharper this time. A full-body freeze with a staccato bark that echoed off the plywood walls. Hale dropped to one knee, murmuring commands, but the Malinois held firm, paw extended toward a seam in the foundation. Elena brought Rex closer, the shepherd's ears pinning back as he mirrored the stance, a low rumble building in his chest. Contact confirmed, Elena radioed calmly, her voice steady over the static. Dual alert on secondary site. Request EOD standby. Reed's response came quick, laced with edge. Negative, Vasquez. Resume primary. That's an echo from yesterday. Stand down. But the dogs didn't yield. Rex pawed insistently, his claws scraping dirt, while Shadow's growl deepened. Hale looked to Eleanor, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. The platoon paused nearby, handlers exchanging glances, the air thickening with unspoken doubt. One EOD tech, Sergeant Patel, broke from his team, detector in hand. Captain, permission to verify. Dual canine hits aren't coincidence. Reed strode over, his boots kicking up dust, face set in a line of controlled frustration. The group formed a loose semicircle, 10 soldiers now, radio silent, watching as Patel knelt and swept the area. The detector beeped erratically, then steadied on a positive. Real trace here, sir. Not simulant. Actual residue. Looks like a leak from storage carried on the wind. The revelation hung in the still air, the sun breaking fully over the tree line to illuminate the scene. Reed's jaw worked silently, his gaze shifting from the dogs to Hale, then Elena. Secure the site, he ordered Patel, then turned to the handlers. Private Hale, Sergeant Vasquez. Debrief in my office post-exercise. Full report. As the drill resumed in fits and starts, the platoon's cohesion frayed at the edges. Whispers turned to murmurs during the cool-down. Dogs called it twice. Reed almost blew it. Elena led Rex back to base, his stride unhurried, but she felt the weight of eyes on them, the quiet acknowledgement that instinct had pierced the chain again. In the kennels, as she hosed down gear, Hale joined her, water splashing against the concrete in rhythmic pulses. "That was no echo, Sarge," he said, voice low, coiling Shadow's lead. "Captain's covering, storage leak means protocol fail on his watch." Elena nodded, wiping her hands on a rag, the scent of wet fur mingling with soap. "Leaks happen, but ignoring the dogs, that's the real risk." She paused, the hose dripping steadily. Memories surfaced unbidden. Years ago, in a forward operating base in Helmand, Rex had alerted on a child, a local boy, no more than 10, hiding shrapnel wounds under ragged clothes. The captain then had dismissed it as just a stray, but Eleanor had insisted on a medic check. The boy had a hidden IED fragment, surgically removed, his life spared by a dog's unerring nose. That boy Jamal had written letters after, smuggled through aid channels. Simple drawings of a shepherd by a tent, a silent thank you that Rex still sniffed at in her footlocker. She hadn't connected it then, but the parallel gnawed now. Rex wasn't just an animal, he carried histories, bonds that outlasted ranks. Telling Hale felt like a breach, but the private's earnestness demanded it. "I've seen it before. Rex saved a kid overseas, boy named Jamal. Alerted on him when no one else saw the danger. Captain called it overreach, but it was right." Hale's expression softened, the story bridging their doubts. "Then we push this up. Can't let Reed bury it." By afternoon, the debrief in Reed's office unfolded under fluorescent hum, walls lined with commendation plaques and a map of deployment zones. Elena and Hale stood at attention, Rex and Shadow kennelled outside, but their absence a palpable void. Reed paced behind his desk, fingers drumming a tactical rhythm. "This residue, it's minor, contained, but your actions bordered on disruption. Explain why I shouldn't log this as insubordination." Hale spoke first, voice firm. "Sir, the dogs alerted per training. Protocol supports verification on dual hits." Reed's eyes hardened. "Protocol supports chain of command, Private. Dogs are assets, not decision-makers." Elena stepped forward, her salute crisp. "With respect, sir, dismissing canine input undermines unit readiness. In my experience..." "Experience noted, Sergeant," Reed interrupted, but a knock at the door cut him short. Lieutenant Klein entered, holding a tablet. "Captain incoming from JAG. Media inquiry on K9 efficacy, tied to a civilian story from Haiti. Involves Sergeant Vasquez's prior unit." The room stilled, the air charged. Elena's pulse quickened. Jamal's old case, resurfacing. Reed's composure cracked fractionally. "Details." Klein glanced at Elena. "A boy from that quake, saved by a SAR dog. Now Rex. He's stateside, visiting bases for a program. Wants to thank the handler. Press is picking it up." Reed exhaled sharply, rubbing his temple. "Handle it quietly. No statements until cleared." But as they filed out, Elena caught the shift, the incident no longer contained, rippling toward public view. Outside, Rex greeted her with a nudge, his warmth a reminder of loyalties deeper than orders. The test had escalated. Conscience now demanded voice, and the chain would bend or break under the weight. "Comment where you're watching from. I want to know how far stories of courage and integrity can reach." The fluorescent lights of Captain Reed's office buzzed faintly as Elena Vasquez exited, the door clicking shut behind her with a finality that echoed in the narrow hallway. Rex waited just outside, leashed to a post, his head lifting at her approach. She crouched briefly, running a hand along his flank, feeling the steady thrum of his heartbeat beneath the coarse fur. The base corridor stretched ahead, lined with lockers and faded posters on operational security, the air thick with the scent of polished linoleum and distant machine oil from the motor pool. Hale fell in step beside her, his boots scuffing softly. That Haiti story, its tying into this, Press sniffing around could flip the script on Reed. Elena kept her gaze forward, navigating the turn toward the quadrangle. Stories like that don't stay buried. Jamal was just a kid then, but dogs like Rex, they remember. She didn't elaborate, but the memory sharpened. The earthquake's aftermath in Port-au-Prince, rubble choking the streets, Rex's relentless pawing until rescuers unearthed her and the boy pinned nearby, his small frame trembling but alive. That bond had pulled Rex into military service, a testament to instincts that transcended programs. By mid-morning, the base stirred with uncharacteristic activity. A civilian liaison from the Public Affairs Office arrived in an unmarked sedan, followed by a small media crew, cameras slung over shoulders, notebooks at the ready. Word spread through the radio net, a special visitor for the K9 unit, part of a veterans outreach program. Elena received the summons via her handheld, report to the parade ground, Rex in tow, uniform inspection ready. She arrived to find the platoon loosely assembled, ranks informal under the climbing sun. The air hummed with anticipation, mingled with the sharp tang of fresh-mowed grass from the grounds crew. Reed stood at the front, posture rigid, briefing the liaison in low tones. Hale hovered nearby, shadow at his side, while Lieutenant Klein coordinated the perimeter, ensuring no unauthorized footage slipped through. The sedan doors opened, and out stepped Jamal, now a young man of 18, taller than Elena remembered, dressed in a simple collared shirt and jeans, his dark hair cropped short. An interpreter accompanied him, but his English had improved, carrying a faint accent from years in resettlement camps. His eyes scanned the group, lighting on the dogs with a mix of reverence and nerves. "The shepherd," he said softly to the liaison, pointing. "That's him. Rex." Elena felt a pull in her chest as Jamal approached, his steps measured on the dew-damp grass. Rex, usually impassive in formations, strained forward on his leash, a low whine escaping as he caught the familiar scent. The shepherd's tail wagged once, then twice, his body language shifting from alert to recognition, a subtle lean, ears softening as if time had folded back to that collapsed building. Jamal knelt, extending a hand slowly. "You saved me," he murmured, voice thick. Rex closed the distance without command, pressing his muzzle into the young man's palm, then lying down beside him, head resting on Jamal's knee. The gesture was quiet, profound, no theatrics, just the unyielding loyalty of a dog who had once dug through chaos for this very soul. Cameras clicked softly, the media crew capturing the moment from a respectful distance, while the platoon watched in stunned silence. Reed cleared his throat, stepping forward. "This is a controlled visit, folks. Sergeant Vasquez explained the protocol here." His tone was even. But Elena caught the undercurrent, control slipping in the face of this unscripted reunion. "Sir," Elena replied, saluting crisply, "Rex was assigned to me after Haiti. He detected Jamal under the debris, scent of blood and fear no human could isolate. That alert saved 2 lives that day." She kept her voice professional, eyes on Reed, but her hand rested on Rex's harness, grounding the moment. Jamal looked up, meeting Reed's gaze. "In my country, dogs like this are guardians, not tools. He knew me when I was broken. Still does." The interpreter nodded, but the words stood clear, drawing murmurs from the handlers. Hale shifted, pride etching his features as Shadow sat alert nearby, echoing the sentiment. The captain's jaw tightened imperceptibly, his insignia glinting under the sun. "Appreciate the sentiment, son. But in our unit, every asset serves the mission. K9 contributions are valued through command. He gestured to the liaison. Let's keep this to the program script. Photos, then escort to the visitor center. But the moment had already escaped containment. As Jamal rose, Rex lingering at his side with a final nudge, the media lead approached Elena. Sergeant, this reunion, it's powerful. Ties right into questions on K9 roles. Any comment on recent training incidents? The question hung, laced with the subtlety of a probe, likely fed by base whispers. Elena paused, weighing the chain against conscience. Our dogs extend our reach. They alert on truths we might miss. That's the bond, handler, K9, and the lives they protect. Reed's eyes narrowed from across the ground, but he held position, the public eye now a factor he couldn't dismiss. The visit proceeded to the K9 facility, Jamal walking with Elena and Rex, the group trailing. Inside the ready room, cooler air carried the familiar sense of hay and leather harnesses. Jamal examined the gear, fingers tracing a worn collar, while handlers shared restrained stories, deployments where alerts had averted disaster, the quiet hours of patrol where a dog's vigilance bridged the isolation. Hale contributed softly, recounting Shadow's dual hits, framing them not as errors but validations. By noon, the media wrapped, but the ripple spread. A press release hit the wires that afternoon. War hero dog reunites with boy he saved. Spotlight on military K9 legacy. Quotes from Elena surfaced, anonymized but pointed, highlighting instinct over rigid protocol. In the mess hall, soldiers clustered around tablets, the story gaining traction online. Views climbing as shares circulated through veteran networks. Reed called an emergency stand-down in the briefing tent. The canvas flapping gently in the breeze. The platoon assembled, faces a mix of curiosity and tension. Dogs kennelled outside, but their influence palpable. This publicity, Reed began, pacing the dirt floor, is a double-edged blade. It honors our work, but it invites scrutiny. Any leaks on internal matters will be traced. Elena stood front row, Rex's absence noted in the empty space at her feet. Sir, the reunion was authorized. It shows what our partners do beyond orders. Reed stopped, facing her. Partners follow leads, Sergeant, not headlines. But his tone carried less conviction, the public narrative forcing a recalibration. Whispers from JAG had arrived via Klein, commendations for the unit's efficacy, subtle pressure to review handler input protocols. As the meeting dispersed into the lengthening shadows, Elena walked the perimeter path alone, the crunch of gravel under her boots syncing with her thoughts. Jamal had left a small gift, a hand-carved wooden shepherd placed in Rex's run with a note, "Guardians forever." Rex sniffed it upon her return, settling beside it with a contented sigh. The defiance of that morning drill had evolved, no longer confined to a single alert, but amplified through recognition, loyalty laid bare for all to see. Hale joined her at the kennel gate, the evening chill settling. Press is calling it a feel-good story, but it's bigger. Reed's got to address the tool line now. Can't ignore what Rex just proved. Elena nodded, clipping the lights low. It's not about proving him wrong. It's about the cost of seeing less. Outside, the base lights flickered on, casting pools of yellow across the fields. The reckoning had gone public, witnesses from media to mentors bearing testimony. Tomorrow would demand response, not just from Reed, but from the institution itself, where a dog's quiet lie, beside a saved soul, challenged the rigid lines of command. In that vulnerability, true strength emerged, rippling toward reform, one alert at a time. The days following Jamal's visit blurred into a cascade of formalities, the base's rhythm disrupted by the hum of inquiries filtering down from higher command. Elena Vasquez reported to the command center at 0600. The sky still bruised with night, her boots echoing on the concrete walkway, slick from an overnight mist. Rex trotted beside her, his paws leaving faint prints that evaporated quickly in the chill. The air carried the sharp bite of pine resin from the bordering woods and the low thrum of generators powering the secure wing, where classified discussions unfolded behind reinforced doors. Inside, the conference room was stark. Long oak table, scarred from years of briefings, walls adorned with unit crests and a digital display cycling deployment stats. Captain Reed sat at the head, flanked by Lieutenant Klein and a JAG representative from Fort Liberty headquarters, a wiry major named Torres with a tablet balanced on his knee. Elena took her seat, Rex settling at her feet under the table, his nose occasionally bumping her ankle in quiet solidarity. Hale was absent, summoned separately, but his presence lingered in the stack of reports before Reed. "Morning, Sergeant," Reed began, his voice level, the lines around his eyes deeper than usual. "This media matter, it's escalated. JAG's reviewing K9 protocols base-wide, prompted by the reunion footage and those training logs. Your input?" Elena straightened, her hands folded on the table, the cool metal of her dog tags pressing against her collarbone. "Sir, the alerts were procedural. Rex and Shadow flagged real risks. Dismissing them as tools overlooks their role in force protection." Torres nodded, tapping his screen. "The press release has 200,000 views already. Civilian angles amplifying calls for handler autonomy in alerts. We're not here for blame, but transparency. Captain, your stance on K9 decision-making?" Reed leaned back, fingers steepled, the fluorescent light casting shadows across his insignia. "My orders emphasized chain verification, but the residue incident, it validated the dogs. I'll concede that." The admission hung, unadorned, a crack in the armor of command. Elena watched him closely. This was no apology, but a pivot, discipline bending to evidence. The meeting stretched into procedural dissection. Timelines of the drills, EOD confirmations, Hale's counseling form now flagged for retraction. Klein interjected with data from other units. Incidents where ignored K9 alerts led to near misses in theater. "This could inform a directive," she said, her tone measured. "Elevate handler discretion in low-threat scenarios with post-action reviews." Torres closed his tablet. "Agreed, Sergeant Vasquez. Your history with Rex factors in. JAG recommends you lead a working group. Integrate civilian SAR insights into military training. Starts next quarter." Elena absorbed it, the weight settling like a new harness. Mentorship had always been implicit in her role, guiding Hale through leads, demonstrating Rex's commands with the patience of shared scars. Now it formalized, rippling outward. "Understood, sir, for the unit's readiness." By noon, the platoon reconvened in the briefing tent, the canvas taut against a building breeze that rustled the surrounding pines. Soldiers filed in, chairs scraping on packed earth, the scent of field rations lingering from the morning chow line. Reed stood before the whiteboard, marker in hand, outlining the JAG feedback without flourish. "Changes incoming. Dual alerts trigger immediate EOD response. No stand down. Handlers report direct to XO if chain delays verification." Murmurs rippled, subdued but affirmative. Hale sat forward, Shadow's lead coiled in his lap like a talisman. When Reed paused, the private raised a hand. "Sir, does this mean the tool reference gets walked back?" Reed met his gaze, the tense light filtering through to soften the edges. "Dogs are unit members, Private. Their alerts are intel we act on. Dismiss that at our peril." The words echoed the morning's concession, a quiet reform etched into protocol. Elena felt Rex's subtle shift beside her chair outside, as if sensing the shift in the air, the hierarchy yielding to the bond that underpinned it. Afternoon brought the working group kickoff, A smaller circle in the K9 ready room. Elena unrolled blueprints of training sites on the scarred table, Rex pacing the perimeter with watchful eyes. Hale joined, along with 2 EOD techs and a veteran handler from another detachment, their uniforms bearing the dust of recent rotations. They mapped scenarios, wind-carried residues, false positives in urban sims, the irreplaceable edge of K9's scent. Elena sketched Rex's Haiti response, not as heroics, but data, alert duration, behavioral cues, the boy's vital signs post-rescue. Jamal's case shows memory in action, she explained, her voice steady, tracing a line on the paper. Rex recognized him after years. That's not training, it's partnership. Hale nodded, adding Shadow's patterns, his earlier doubt forged into contribution. The group built a framework, enhanced bonding modules, cross-unit drills blending human and K9 input. By dusk, as the sun bled orange across the windows, the outline solidified, a legacy of the drill's defiance, transforming vulnerability into institutional strength. Words spread through the base like radio chatter, commendations for Elena and Hale, a unit-wide memo on K9 valor. In the mess hall that evening, soldiers clustered around shared screens, the media story evolving into profiles on military working dogs, quiet tributes to the silent guardians. Reed approached Elena's table, tray in hand, his nod brief but genuine. "Good work, Sergeant. This group's output could set precedent." She returned the salute across the steam of her meal, the clatter of utensils, a backdrop to the moment. "For the mission, sir." Outside, under floodlights, Rex waited by the kennel path, his silhouette sharp against the gravel. Jamal's carving sat in his run, a symbol now of bonds that outlasted oversight. Weeks later, the reforms took root. The first joint drill under new protocols unfolded flawlessly. Alerts verified in real time, handlers empowered without chaos. Elena mentored a fresh rotation, her lessons laced with restraint. The cost of integrity, measured in salutes, held steady, and leads trusted fully. Hale thrived, Shadow's confidence mirroring his own, the private's fire tempered into reliable command. In quiet hours, Elena walked the perimeter with Rex, the night's chill carrying the distant whine of rotors. The system had learned, not through upheaval, but evolution, the moral courage of one handler and her dog, sparking a chain that honored loyalty above all. Elena became more than a sergeant. She embodied the unyielding conscience that turned rigid orders into just ones. Her legacy etched in every alert that followed. Subscribe for more stories of loyalty, courage, and justice within the ranks. Thank you for watching the case of They Said the Dog's Just an Animal, until it laid beside the boy it had saved years ago. See you in the next one. In the end, true guardianship lay not in commands issued, but in the quiet spaces where a dog's unwavering gaze reminded soldiers of the humanity they swore to protect.